Michael Reynolds crouched among the ruins of what had once been Chicago's Grand Library, his body pressed against the cold rubble, hands trembling as he sifted through the ash of forgotten books. The city around him was a graveyard of steel and concrete, towers collapsed like dominoes, streets cracked open into chasms that swallowed the remnants of cars, trees, and hope alike. The sky above was a constant churn of gray clouds, tinged with smoke, glowing faintly with the distant fires of cities still burning hours away. Every gust of wind carried with it a metallic tang, a mixture of ozone, rust, and decay. Michael had long since stopped keeping track of time. Days had blended into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. His memories of the world before the invasion, a time of warmth, laughter, and unbroken sunlight, were a blur, fragments flickering like old film reels. He remembered the smell of fresh-cut grass in Iowa, the clatter of his mother's kitchen at breakfast, the way his father would hum while repairing broken radios in his workshop. But those fragments were ghosts now. Everything else had been taken by the ships that arrived one night, falling from the sky with a sound that seemed to split the world in two. Michael had survived by learning to vanish. To move silently through streets that had become hunting grounds for the alien patrols, to scavenge what little remained, to hide his presence even from the remnants of his own species, who had succumbed to despair or hunger long before the invaders had finished their work. He had learned to listen to the city, its echoes, its creaks, its whispers, and to trust the instincts that told him where to step and when to remain still. But despite all his skills, every night, he lay awake with the same thought, am I the last? He wasn't alone when they found him. At first, he thought it was another patrol, mechanical, cold, merciless. But when the hum of engines grew close and a strange light pierced the dust-filled air, Michael froze, heart hammering in his chest. A ship, sleek and gleaming even amidst the desolation, hovered silently above the rubble. A ramp extended, and figures emerged. Humans. Real humans, alive and whole, moving with a grace and precision that made him question whether he was dreaming. "Hey," one of them called gently, her voice carrying over the wind. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back into a tight braid. Her uniform had insignias he didn't recognize, but she looked human, so human it brought tears to his eyes. Michael's first instinct was to flee, to hide as he had for years. But something in her eyes, soft, steady, almost painfully kind, made him hesitate. I don't, he stammered, words failing him. "I'm Captain Elena Marks," she said, kneeling a few feet away, not too close, not threatening. "We're here to help. You're safe." The words were simple, but they struck him like a hammer to his chest. Safe. That word had not touched his ears in years. He wanted to scream in disbelief, to run, to throw himself at them. But instead, he just sat there, staring, as if trying to convince himself that they weren't another trick of a dying mind. Behind her, two other figures spread out. Commander Jonah Price, stocky and cautious, scanned the surroundings with a trained eye, while Lieutenant Karen Liu checked the equipment mounted to their belts, listening for any sign of threat. The last was Engineer Derek Shaw, who gave Michael a small, reassuring nod before crouching beside him. "Do you have food?" Michael whispered finally, voice hoarse. "Water?" Elena smiled, a fragile curve in the middle of chaos. "Yes. And shelter. Come with us." He didn't move at first. His muscles were tight, memory of years of hiding screaming at him to flee. But something, maybe the warmth in her eyes, maybe the sheer impossibility of the situation, made him rise. Slowly, cautiously, he followed them back to the ship. Inside, the air was warm, and the hum of engines was oddly comforting. Michael sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the stark contrast between the sterile efficiency of the ship and the ruin outside. He couldn't stop staring at the other humans, their ease, their confidence, the way they seemed to belong to each other and to the universe in a way he had long thought lost to him forever. Elena sat across from him. "You've been alone for a long time," she said gently. "We can help. We can get you somewhere safe." Michael shook his head, tears threatening again. I don't know how to live anymore. Everyone's gone." Jonah crouched beside him. "Then start by surviving again. Not alone this time." And so he began to talk. Slowly, at first, then more freely. He told them about the first wave of the invasion, the ships that had arrived without warning, the cities burning, the screams that never stopped. About the weeks he spent scavenging, hiding, and praying that someone, anyone, had survived like he had. He told them about the nights he had spent staring at the stars, imagining a universe that no longer cared for him, imagining what could have been. Elena listened, her gaze steady, never judging, never breaking the fragile trust that was forming. "You're stronger than you know, Michael," she said finally. "You survived when no one else could. That's something worth saving." And in that moment, he realized it: survival had never been just about food or water. It had been about hope, about endurance, about clinging to the ember of humanity when all else was lost. And somehow, through sheer stubbornness, he had held on. But as the ship lifted off the scorched city, rising into the black expanse of space, Michael felt a strange weight settle on his shoulders. He was the last human, or at least, the last one known to exist, but that didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. In the vast darkness of space, aboard a ship filled with strangers who were somehow his saviors, he realized that being the last was not a curse, it was a responsibility. For in his survival lay the seed of something unimaginable. Somewhere beyond the stars, unseen eyes were watching, and whispers of old legends stirred in the cosmic winds. They spoke of humanity not as it had been, fragile and doomed, but as it could become, a species born of resilience, courage, and an unbreakable will to endure. Michael Reynolds, the last human, did not yet understand the magnitude of what he carried. But the universe did. And the universe was waiting. The edge of the Sol system had never felt so alive. Even as the Perseverance drifted silently through the void, a subtle hum seemed to resonate through the ship's hull, a vibration that was more felt than heard. Michael Reynolds stood on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Each one felt different now, as if they had shifted while he slept, or as if some unseen force had stirred the galaxy awake. "It's beautiful," he whispered, though the word barely captured what he saw. Elena Marks, leaning against the railing beside him, nodded. "It is. But it's also dangerous. We're entering territory that has never welcomed humans before. And some of what we'll encounter, well, Michael, you might not even have a frame of reference for it." Michael turned to look at her, uncertainty etched across his face. "I survived Earth. I survived the invasion. What could be worse than that?" Elena's eyes softened. "You think you know what fear is. But nothing on Earth could prepare you for the consciousness of a species that exists as thought, light, and memory simultaneously. We're about to meet beings that, until now, have only whispered about us in myth and rumor." Michael's heart pounded. He had never imagined that the galaxy remembered humans at all. If anything, he had believed the universe had moved on, indifferent to the extinction of his species. Yet, as the hum grew into a resonant vibration that made his chest ache with anticipation, he felt something profound: the universe was aware. And it was calling. The first contact came silently. At first, it was nothing more than an anomaly on the sensors, an energy signature unlike anything the crew had catalogued. Then, slowly, shapes emerged from the void. Crystalline vessels, fluid and iridescent, drifted into view. They pulsed with light, refracting across their own surfaces in patterns that were almost hypnotic, impossible to map with human perception. These ships were alive in ways that defied logic, and at their center was the unmistakable signal: recognition of Michael Reynolds, the last human. The bridge fell into a tense silence. Commander Jonah Price broke it first, his voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. "Captain, those are legends. The civilizations we thought were stories, myths, look at them." Michael felt a strange warmth in his chest as he watched the ships move, their forms shifting like living constellations. Somehow, they weren't just observing him, they were responding to him. It was as if his mere presence activated a code written in the very fabric of their existence. "They know me?" he asked, voice trembling. Elena placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Not just you. They know humanity. You're the last ember, the spark they've been waiting for. Everything that follows depends on you, Michael." The first emissary projected its presence directly into the ship's communications array, bypassing conventional signals. It was not a voice as humans understood it. It was a flood of emotion, intention, and vision all at once, a living tapestry of thought and understanding. Michael felt it like a pulse in his chest, as if the being was reaching into the very core of his being. You survived when no one else could, the presence conveyed. You carry the essence of a species that was underestimated across the cosmos. You are the proof that humanity has not ended. Karen Lou whispered, her voice barely audible over the ship's quiet hum. I can feel it. It's like they're reading him, feeling him, honoring him. Yes, Michael said, voice barely above a whisper. I think they've been waiting for us. Waiting for me. Over the next few days, the emissaries shared knowledge that transcended human understanding. They showed humanity's potential through simulations that bent the laws of physics, training that fused instinct with cosmic awareness, and technology that could manipulate matter and energy at levels Michael had once only dreamed about. They did not simply teach, they awakened. Humans, even in their limited numbers, began to evolve. What had been instinct became skill, what had been skill became mastery. Michael, once a lone survivor scraping by in ruined cities, found himself at the center of a fledgling army, humans who were learning not just to survive, but to thrive among the stars. Elena watched him during the training sessions, noting the subtle shifts in his demeanor. You're changing, she observed one evening. Michael turned, a faint smile touching his lips. So are they. We're growing. I never thought I'd see humans like this. Not like this. Derek Shaw, engineering officer, joined them, shaking his head in disbelief. This is insane. I can't even explain what half of this tech does. Ships that heal themselves, weapons that bend light, it's like stepping into a dream. Jonah Price, ever the pragmatist, frowned. Dreams are dangerous if you forget reality. The invaders won't wait. They'll sense the disturbance, and when they do, they'll come. Michael's eyes darkened. Then we'll be ready. Not just ready, we'll be stronger than they ever imagined. And this time, we won't be alone. Indeed, the alien fleets had already begun to stir. The invaders who had reduced Earth to ash were sensing the growing energy, the formation of an army they had assumed extinct. Their arrogance blinded them to the subtle truth. Michael Reynolds, humanity's last ember, was now the linchpin of a force that even they could not comprehend. The alien emissaries continued to train humans in ways that transcended traditional combat. They taught them to manipulate gravity, to harness light as a weapon, to move through dimensions in ways that made the impossible routine. Michael became both student and instructor, bridging the gap between human ingenuity and cosmic wisdom. He learned not only to fight, but to lead, to inspire, and to carry the weight of a species' survival on his shoulders without faltering. And yet, despite the exhilaration of power and knowledge, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down like gravity itself. Every lesson, every demonstration of skill, reminded him that humanity's survival was no longer just about him, it was about the entire species' return. One misstep could mean extinction. One failure could shatter the fragile hope that had endured for centuries. One night, Michael stood alone on the observation deck, looking at the alien fleet shimmering against the void. Elena joined him, her voice soft. Do you feel it? Everywhere, Michael admitted. It's like the universe itself is alive, watching us, guiding us. But it's also terrifying. If we fail, it's not just me who dies. It's everything we've been given. You won't fail, she said firmly. Because you're not doing this alone anymore. Humanity isn't alone anymore. We have allies the galaxy has only whispered about in legends. And we have you. Michael exhaled slowly, letting the words settle. For the first time since the destruction of Earth, he allowed himself a glimmer of hope, not just for survival, but for rebirth. Humanity was no longer a species on the brink of extinction. They were awakening. They were growing. And soon, they would return to the galaxy not as prey, but as a force to be reckoned with. In the deep silence of space, among ships that shimmered like constellations brought to life, the first whispers of humanity's return began to echo. Legends beyond the stars were stirring, preparing for a moment that would shake the cosmos. Michael Reynolds, the last human, had survived for this very reason. And when humanity returned, it would not return quietly. The void was alive with anticipation. Aurora's Flame, humanity's flagship, cut through the darkness of space, its hull shimmering like liquid silver under the light of distant stars. Behind it, a growing armada followed, ships of human design fused with alien technology, engines humming with energies that bent light and twisted reality. Michael Reynolds stood on the bridge, shoulders squared, eyes scanning the endless expanse. Each pulse on the sensor array, each flicker of energy, carried the promise of destiny fulfilled or shattered. Elena Marks stepped beside him, her expression taut with the same intensity he felt. "They're coming," she said softly, voice steady but low. "All of them." Michael's hands clenched the railing. "I know." Behind them, Commander Jonah Price adjusted the targeting arrays, checking formations and energy fields. "They have no idea what's about to hit them," he muttered. "They think we're still weak, still fragmented. They're wrong." Michael exhaled, feeling a strange mixture of exhilaration and fear. For years, humanity had been hunted, erased from the galaxy's memory. And now, armed not just with technology, but with centuries of lost potential amplified by legends beyond stars, they were returning. And the universe would never look at humans the same way again. The first invader fleet appeared like shadows coalescing from the dark, hundreds of ships arranged in formations meant to intimidate. Their surfaces glinted with lethal efficiency, every vessel a weapon, every weapon calibrated to annihilate. But they were not prepared for what Aurora's Flame carried. Michael's voice rang out over the bridge comms. "Positions locked. Shields up. Focus fire on the leading vanguard. We move on my mark." The alien fleet surged forward, engines burning like molten veins. At first, it seemed as though the humans would be swept aside. But then the light shifted. The ships of humanity shimmered, bending energy around them, forming impossible geometries that disoriented the enemy sensors. Weapons fired that were not just explosive, but elemental, hurling concentrated light, energy, and gravitational distortions. The human armada moved as one, precise and fluid, each maneuver a combination of instinct, strategy, and alien training. Elena watched in awe as Michael issued commands, his voice calm, authoritative, and unyielding. "Jonah, flank left. Karen, reinforce shields. Derek, divert energy to propulsion. Let's show them what it means to underestimate humanity." Every ship responded, and the void erupted in violent beauty. Beams of energy streaked across space, colliding with enemy shields in dazzling displays of light and sound. Some alien vessels disintegrated instantly, while others twisted, their forms destabilized by forces they had never encountered. Humans fought not just with weapons, but with an unyielding spirit that pulsed through their fleet like a heartbeat. Michael's mind moved faster than he had ever thought possible, calculating vectors, anticipating enemy maneuvers, improvising strategies in real time. He was no longer just a survivor, he was a commander of a force that had been imagined in legends, forged by centuries of whispered stories across the galaxy. Every human ship under his command reflected that same brilliance, their endurance, their ingenuity, their unbroken will. Elena leaned closer, her voice barely audible. "They're faltering. They didn't expect this. They never imagined humanity could fight like this." Michael didn't respond. He didn't need to. Every pulse of energy, every maneuver executed by the fleet, was an answer. They were not just fighting for revenge. They were fighting to reclaim their place in the universe, to remind all civilizations that humans were not prey, they were predators in their own right, shaped by survival, cunning, and unbreakable will. The alien invaders attempted to reorganize, but it was too late. Human ships moved with a grace that belied their size, weaving between enemy formations, striking with deadly precision. Michael watched as the lead invader ship, massive, gleaming, monstrous, twisted violently, caught in a gravitational trap engineered by human ingenuity and alien guidance. With a final pulse of energy, it collapsed inward, disintegrating into streams of molten light. Jonah's laugh, low and triumphant, echoed across the bridge. "They can't take us down. Not now. Not ever." Michael allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction, but he knew the battle was far from over. The invaders had underestimated humanity once, and it had cost them. But there were always more, always threats lurking in the void. And yet, for the first time in history, Michael felt a certainty he had never known. Humanity would endure. They would not just survive, they would return stronger than any force the galaxy had witnessed. Hours passed, though time felt warped in the chaos of battle. One by one, enemy fleets crumbled under the relentless advance of human and alien-taught tactics. Ships that had once been symbols of fear fell apart before the ingenuity of a species thought extinct. And as the last of the invaders vanished into the void, silence settled over the battlefield, a heavy calm that contrasted the violence that had just erupted. Michael stepped onto the observation deck, staring out at the remnants of the battlefield. Stars sparkled against the dark canvas, but now they seemed to shine differently, brighter, almost celebratory. Humanity had returned. They were no longer hidden, no longer fragile. They were legends, forged in the fires of extinction and reborn among the stars. Elena joined him, her expression softening. "We did it," she said, almost reverently. Michael shook his head, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "No, we. Humanity did it." Behind them, the Armada maintained formation, engines humming softly, shields still pulsing with residual energy. The humans aboard were exhausted, yet exhilarated, their faces reflecting the pride and wonder of survival against impossible odds. They were no longer victims. They were architects of destiny, witnesses to the birth of a new era. "Captain," Jonas said, stepping up beside them. "The fleet is secure. We've neutralized all immediate threats. What now?" Michael's eyes never left the stars. "We continue. We rebuild. And we remind the universe that humanity is not just alive, it is unstoppable. We were never meant to be defeated. We were meant to endure. And now, nothing will stop us." Karen Lou placed a hand on his arm, her voice quiet but firm. "We've seen the legends. We've fought alongside them. What happens next is ours to shape." Michael nodded. "Exactly. This is just the beginning. Humanity has returned not as the species it once was, but as something greater. Something that can hold its own among the stars." As the crew looked on, a deep calm settled over Aurora's flame. The stars seemed to shine with approval, distant worlds trembling slightly with the pulse of life that had returned to the galaxy. Somewhere, unseen, the whispers of cosmic legends acknowledged the rise of a species that had defied annihilation. And in the heart of it all, Michael Reynolds, the last human, stood not as a survivor, but as the herald of humanity's rebirth. From the ashes of Earth to the infinite expanse of space, the legacy of humans would echo across the cosmos. Their journey had been one of endurance, but their return was one of triumph. The universe had learned a lesson it would never forget: a single ember, when protected and nurtured, could ignite a blaze that no force could extinguish. Humanity was no longer just a memory, it was a legend. And the galaxy, vast and indifferent for eons, would never again doubt the power of the last human and the army born from the spark he carried.